Good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy Trinity Sunday. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're keeping warm. Let's talk about the Trinity. The Trinity is one of those great mysteries of the church. It's this amazing thing where we get to experience God in many diverse ways. And we try and nail it down into something we understand. If we take a look at the tree right behind me, when we look at this tree, we see that it has roots, it has a stem, a trunk, and it has branches and a canopy. And when we look at them, we try to create these lines where we understand where each part ends and which part begins. But we know that they blend in together. And when we think about ourselves, we can think about our past self, our present self, our future self, who we have been, who we will be, and who we are right now. Where do you draw the line between these things? Well, they're kind of all related to each other. In the same way we experience Jesus as God here on earth, we experience God as the great creative force in this world, the God of creation, and we experience the Spirit who moves us each and every day. We don't draw straight lines between those things. And in this world, when we think about our relationship to each other, we can't really draw strong lines between us because we're called to be interrelated with one another. And I have a story about that. Bob's Bubble. Bob was the eldest of 4 quadruplets. There was Bob, Bennett, Brody, and Benjamin. And even though Bob was essentially the same age as his brothers, he was a bit bigger and also a bit of a bully. Bob was a brilliant builder, and so were his brothers, but he would get a bit jealous when anyone else tried to build anything. Bennett, Brody, and Benjamin got a bit tired of all of this and called a family meeting with their bigger brother who was a bully. Bennett complained about Bob bashing his building blocks. Brody complained about Bob's bullying. And Benjamin just complained about Bob eating all the ice cream and him having to run all the way to the store to get some more. Well, Bob was furious at hearing all of this and yelled and screamed and stomped and stuck his fingers in his ears and yelled la 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 and tried not to see anything as his brothers quickly flew away. As the brothers lay in a heap, Bob stormed off, yelling that their problems were their problems and he didn't have any problems, and any problems they had were their own, and he didn't have to take this anymore. Bob found some bubbly postal wrap and wrapped himself up inside of it, making a cocoon where he couldn't see the outside world and couldn't hear anything from the outside world, couldn't hear any of the criticism, and stayed inside for a very long time. It was safe in there. Nobody would ever tell him anything. He didn't have to listen to anybody anymore. The other quadruplets found the big ball that their bigger brother was inside of and bounced and jumped around, curiously wondering what was going on. Bob built a balance wheel for his bubble wrap ball and decided to drive around blindly without being able to see a single thing, bumping into his brothers, bumping around the house, bumping into the factory downtown that everyone worked at. Bump, bump, bump. Bob didn't build buildings. Bob built destruction. Eventually, the bumping into things even grew too much for Bob. It was somehow a criticism of him that he was bumping into things. So Bob added a balloon to his big ball of bubbles, and away he flew into the sky, not to be bothered by anyone. Well, his brothers grew and got jobs, and they kept an eye on their big brother in his bubble-wrap balloon high above the city. Even after everything that Bob had done and they had had to clean up the town, they still cared for their big brother, even if he was a bit of a bully. Then one day, high above the town, a bird came and burst Bob's balloon, and his bubble began to fall. His brothers rushed to his aid, trying to cushion the blow. Well, all that time up in the balloon, while his brothers had grown bigger and bigger, Bob, the biggest brother of them all, had become the smallest big brother. You see, Because when we stay inside of our bubbles only let us become as big as we can be inside of those bubbles. As big as those bubbles are, is as big as we will get. So Bob, the biggest of the brothers, who was now the smallest big brother, went with his bigger baby brothers back to their home. Home where the bigger baby brothers helped their smaller, older, bigger brother get better from having his bubble burst. And since then, Bob began to grow and hasn't stopped. Thanks for joining me this week. Let's say a small prayer before we go. Dear God, help us remember the space between us is the space that we create. That the difference between you and me is so little, and that we have to think of the us and how we all are called to be one family in you. Help us celebrate our differences. Help us celebrate our commonalities. Help us be that family you call us to be. Amen. All right. See you next week.